Hey, it is a great honor for me today to be talking about something that dentists just don't want to talk about, and that is the financial accounting side of dentistry. I'm a dentist. I get it. I mean, I would rather do a root canal than play golf. I swear to God, the most fun thing I do in my life is try to pull all four wisdom teeth in under 5 minutes. I always, after they're all numbed and ready to go, I always set a timer just because it's thrilling to get out each wisdom tooth in under a minute. I love dentistry. And when you come out of dental school and you start a dental office, the first week where you got to make payroll, there's not a dentist in America that even knows how to do payroll. I mean, in 8 years of college, we don't do payroll. They don't learn. Nobody, I've never met a dentist. I'm 52 years old. I've never met a dentist that could tell me his return on equity, his return on asset. If they tell you their profit margin, if you zero down on that, I say, like, what's your labor? And they go, 25%, I think. And I'll say, well, does that include health insurance and FICA matching and payroll taxes and continuing education? Oh, I don't know. They don't know. Right. And then if you put a post up on Dental Town, like, why did this root canal fail? It'll get a gazillion views and comments. And if someone puts up there and says, what should my supply costs be? You know, he might as well talk to himself in the closet. So it's an honor today, and you got a big task on you, is Adam Smith, how do you get dentists to focus on something they don't want to focus on? The business side of dentistry, the accounting side of dentistry. How do you do it?
Great question, Howard. A lot of times the people that are coming to us are the ones that are really in need. They haven't focused on it for quite some time, and they find themselves in a really tight spot, and they realize, well, maybe I should focus on this because it's not where I want it right now, and I don't really know how to get it there. So a lot of it comes from need. And then, there are a lot of dentists that are business savvy that realize either, number one, they don't know how to do it, or number two, they don't have the time to do it and they don't want to do it. And those are the other people that generally come to us. So creating a lot of interest, it's there. If people aren't making what they want to make, they want to know why they're not, and they want to understand what numbers they need to focus on to make what they want to make. So,
well, I'll defend my fellow dentists any day of the week. And I think the one problem that dentistry has, which is just completely insane and ludicrous, is all the practice management software is available, whether it be Dentrix or EagleSoft or Open Dental or whatever. None of them connect to QuickBooks. Right. Quicken Online. Microsoft owns Great Plains Accounting, Peachtree Accounting. The big one that runs the Fortune 500 is, what's that out of Germany? GAS or AGS, or I don't know. It's what all the Fortune 500 use. But there's just no accounting software. I mean, so the dentist has got this software, and he's got, I'm going to schedule Adam Smith for an hour for an MOD. And I can bill your insurance, and I can make your appointment. I can do all that. But then when I go to pay my rent, mortgage, equipment, build out computer, insurance, sundries, all that stuff, it's an accounting software. And these two things aren't on the same platform, which is completely insanity. And if you set up your practice management system where it said, well, how many operatories do you have? 4. And you said, okay, what are your hours? Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And then you could just start assigning costs to all these deals. And then when you got the PPO sheet that said, we'll pay you $200 for a filling, and the schedule says, oh, he takes 1 hour to do a filling, and then he knows the overhead, they say, oh, doctor, it costs you $210 to do a filling. So if you sign up for this plan at $200, you'll lose $10 on every filling. I mean, this is just so obvious. So your entire industry is invented because of the incompetency of Dentrix, EagleSoft, SoftEd, Open Dental. Go down the line. None of them can do the basic obvious. Isn't that kind of sad?
Yeah, it is. It's, that's what we run into all the time, is that they understand how to use their practice management system. They understand how to put that in. They understand what needs to happen from A to Z in their practice. But at the end of the day, they don't know a lot of time how that's affecting their bottom line. They can kind of see how it's affecting their top line with production and collections. But they've got to go in a completely different software, and they don't see the effects of what's happening in the practice management system on what's happening in the financials. So
Right,
you're
and it's all
absolutely
their
right.
fault. I mean, when you go into publicly traded restaurants, I mean, those guys have management information system that says, "Hey, Adam, it's 9 o'clock. Our store closes at midnight. From 9 to 12, we're only expected to do $300. You're supposed to have an 18% crew labor, and right now you have 6 people clocked in, so you're going to run a 27% crew labor. So you need to send home 2 people." And the 27-year-old office manager punk running a franchise restaurant that does $3 million a year bullseyes it because he has some help. And then
Yep.
here's a dentist that knows calculus and geometry and trig and physics and chemistry and biology, and he might as well be Stevie Wonder. I mean, he has no data to work with. She just completely. It's just crazy. Don't even get me started on that. So you started with basically the Japanese proverb that successful man fall down 7 times, get up 8. Most of your new clients, it sounds like, they kind of fell down. They're not sure about the finance. They're not cash flowing. I think the big red flag I hear from Dennis saying, I say, well, why did you get a consultant? Why did you get help? And he goes, well, when my CPA told me I need to write a check to the IRS for $44,000 and I had $1,200 in my savings account, I knew something was wrong. So you've been doing this for over a decade. You have over 100 dental clients. Explain to me what a new dentist walking into you looks like. Try to describe for our viewers, what is the average dentist? What do they walk in there? What do they don't know? How do you help the average guy walking in your front door, Adam?
Great question. So initially, we just start with a financial analysis, looking through their financials. A lot of times they've been doing their books by themselves, and that takes some cleanup, getting it into proper categories so we can compare apples to apples. And a lot of people don't understand this. When their friend says, I'm 50% profitable, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're 50% profitable the way that you would determine 50% profitable. So we want to compare apples to apples before we make any decisions on financials. So we restructure everything, make sure that things are properly classified. We look through, and if they're not properly classified, we get the details on it and get them into the right categories so that we can give them a proper benchmark, so that we can say, yes, your supply costs are high, and we know that we're not saying your supply costs are high when their supply costs are actually in line, but they've got some office supplies lumped in with dental supplies, right? So we make sure that things are in the proper categories, and then we say, this is where you're coming in at in all of these ratios. This is where you can be and really where you should be. And then we look at what we're going to do after that is pull their practice information in, the things that they've been putting into their practice management system, and say, these are probably some of the effects on this number and why it's not where it should be. It could be that you're paying too much for your supplies, or it could be that you're ordering too many supplies. It could be that you're paying too much for your lab, or it could be that you're not doing very much lab-related work, so you have a lower production per patient. But once we figure out what the picture looks like on the financial side and bringing in their QuickBooks, things that sometimes people don't like to look at, then we know where to focus on what direction to send the dentist in on what they should be looking at out of their practice management system.
I want to say a couple things to Dennis that by the way, I love your name, you're Adam Smith. I mean, my God, that's the first book in economics was Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nation. And by the way, that's kind of an interesting, creepy story. I mean, it was two 32-year-old Scots in 1776. One, Adam Smith, wrote The Wealth of Nations, which was free markets. And then Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, which was free people. And America was the first time you mixed free people with free markets. And it was such an economic explosion that 250 years later, we're still the richest country in the world. And your mother named you after that, Adam Smith, because she knew you were going to go into dental practice management. Your mother just called it the minute she saw you. She said, this man is taking Adam Smith to dentistry. So good. Tell your mother thank you for that. But I want to say a couple things to cover for Adam, because when Adam goes into an office and he's looking at high supply cost, I've seen people complain to their supply rep from Patterson, Shine, Benco, Burkhart, and they say, well, my supplies are too hard. And the nice supply lady is saying, well, we have different gloves for you and the two hygienists. If we could agree on just one brand of gloves. And they're like, no, we won't do that. And then she's like, well, you use the most expensive bonding agent known to man. And could we use this one? No. So you say, I want low supply costs. And then when these reps tell you how to do that, you just like a 2-year-old tantrum, throw yourself on the floor. And it's the same thing with labs. So the dentist, you should go price that you sold this minus your cost equals your profit. Dentist doesn't do that. He signs up first for a PPO, and then he sends it to the greatest lab known to man. So he's getting paid for a Chevy, sends it to a lab that makes a Mercedes, and then he's mad that his overhead's too high. And then I'll say, well, if you're the one who agreed to this PPO. And for my international viewers, a PPO is a preferred provider network where they agree to give you a volume of patients, but you have to do everything for a reduced fee. And by the way, our viewers don't have insurance in India and China and Africa and Latin America. But anyway, and so you decided that you're gonna accept $700 for a crown. But then you send to some lab that wants 150, 160, 180 bucks a unit. Then I'll say, well, why don't you send it to Glidewell? No, I think this lab up the street's the best one in the world. Okay, well then cancel the PPO. Go to the market and say, hey, we sell Mercedes, Lexus, Porsche. We're treating people who have a lot of money and pay cash. You say, oh no, I want to treat the poor. Dude, it's just mutually exclusive ideology. I mean, you can't sign up for low cost and then have everything high price. So a dentist needs to listen to people like you and say, hey, what I think your strongest asset is, Adam, is that you can go to that individual dentist and say, dude, I got data on over 100 docs. You got it, I know you think that you're reinventing the wheel, but I got data for 100 docs for over a decade. So what decisions are you trying to get these guys to make? Oh, and you started with, basically, it's silly. Dentistry doesn't have a chart of accounts.
Right.
How come the American Dental Association doesn't have a standard chart of accounts? Because you see it at a practice manager or at a study club. All these guys are saying numbers. And with an MBA, I know that nobody has any idea what they're talking about.
Right.
And they're sitting there thinking, oh, my overhead's high because I'm 60% overhead and he's 50% overhead. It's like, dude, it'd be more likely that you'd be hit and killed by a meteorite at this dinner than any of these guys' numbers are correct. I've never seen it once. Any dentist who's told me what his numbers are, and then when I go look myself, they're not even in the ballpark.
Right. It's really rare that happens.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing is we've got to compare apples to apples. Don't make decisions on something that somebody said without having the knowledge of what was behind what they said and the knowledge of what's behind what you're comparing it to.
Why don't you post the chart of accounts on Dentaltown?
We did. We'll go in and post it again.
Oh, you did that a week ago or a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
Will you send me that link?
Yeah, we'll post it again and send that to you.
Yes, send me that link and I'll push that on it today. But so a chart of accounts. So again, sorry I keep interrupting you. I'm so passionate about this subject, but go in and walk through to our listeners what that new guy does and what decisions you help him make and where could he possibly be a year or two later after listening to you guys.
Okay. So initially, like I said, we're getting the picture of the financials. What do the financials look like? If we see that a lot of those things are coming in high or higher than where they should be, let's say that your supplies are at 12%, which is much higher than they should be. We look at a couple things. We look at the ratio of implants that you're doing because implant supplies are typically higher. But then so are the production and collections on implants. But that can bring that up a little bit. And then we start looking into, okay, that's a variable cost. So there's two reasons why that's out of line. And a variable cost is something that changes by the number of patients that you see. So if
as opposed to a fixed cost like rent, you just pay rent whether you see one patient or two.
Right. You don't pay more for your practice management system because you have more patients. That's a fixed cost. But supplies are a variable cost because you pay that each time you work on a patient. You use supplies each time you work on a patient. So when we see those out of line, we've got two options. Well, three options actually. Either you like to use, like Howard said, the Mercedes, the Lexus, those types of supplies. You've got your supplies that you cling on to, and those are the more expensive supplies. Maybe you're getting charged too much by the supply company that you're using, or maybe you're producing off of those patients and you're not collecting the money. So maybe you've got an accounts receivable issue that we need to look at. And then one that also happens is maybe you're a conservative treatment planner, meaning you produce less per patient than most people do, which if you're using the same amount of supplies to produce less, your supply cost is going to be a higher percentage of your production and your collections. So we'd look at all of those things if we see that out of whack, and we'd say, okay, where are your accounts receivable days? Are those in line? And that gives us, then we dig into that and we can determine, are we paying too much?
But can you go over those account receivables in line? What is in line? 1 month's production? I mean,
Right.
is that in line, would you say?
Yeah, so we always shoot for under 30 days of production.
If you produce $50,000 a month and your account receivables are 50,000, then you're average.
Yep. So to figure out your accounts receivable days, an equation is take your production for the last year. You're going to divide your accounts receivable into that. So take your accounts receivable number. If that's 30,000 and you produced $1 million in the last year, you take 30,000 divided by $1 million, which will give you a percentage of your production that's in accounts receivable, and then times that number by 365, and that's the days that you have in accounts receivable. We want that number to be below 30. I've seen it as low as yesterday. I actually did an analysis with someone who had the lowest accounts receivable days I've seen. That was 13.2 days in accounts receivable. I've seen around 15 pretty frequently. Under 30, though, is a healthy range. Anything above 30, then we start to look at different time frames of your accounts receivable. Do you have too much going into 90 days? Do you have too much going into the 60 to 90 days? Or did you have a really high production month and a lot of that accounts receivable is now in your current accounts receivable, which in that case is actually fine. But then we can determine, is this number out of whack because of your accounts receivable or because of the supplies themselves?
And I just want to say one thing on the money thing. It's I believe, who knows if it's genetics, your DNA, how your mom and dad raised you, I don't know, but some people have no problem, and I'm talking about your staff, treatment coordinator. Some people just have no problem saying, Adam, this is what you owe right now, right now, right now. And other personalities are just like, oh my God, that's so much money. I can't ask Adam to give me $500 and it's Christmas in 2 weeks and he's got a family and I just can't do it. And those people, God bless them, they're sweet. I love them, but they can't be in charge of presenting treatment and taking money. I mean, I've seen it so many times where a dentist will trade out that one position for someone who's just no problem telling you, Adam, you have 4 fillings and they're $250 each. It's $1,000 and I need this. And the patient says, okay. And so the treatment coordinator and the person collecting the money is probably more important than the dentist.
I agree with that. Well, no, I don't agree with that. They're more important than the dentist because you wouldn't have any production without the dentist.
You can't say that. I can say because I'm a dentist. No, but the treatment coordinator could hire an associate dentist to fill the order. I mean, she could hire a kid out of school to fill the order, but right. It's a special skill set, sales. And right. A lot of dentists, if you say, well, do you sell dentistry? They get upset that you even said that word. I mean, it's like a 4-letter dirty word or something. And so, so dentists, if you're not treatment planning and you're not collecting, it's just like a football team. I mean, if I just saw your numbers and all I see for the quarterback is 4 interceptions and 60 yards per game, we need a new quarterback. Right. And dentists, they're emotionally attached and they say, well, Margaret's been with me for 7 years. Well, I don't care. You've never made the playoffs in 7 years. So right. Did you go to school for 8 years for Margaret? Or does the dental office come first? So that's a tough call. So what other numbers are you looking into? You talked about account receivables. You talked about lab supplies.
Let me just reflect really quickly back on accounts receivable. If you've got someone in that position and you've got a lot of money in accounts receivable, that's a bigger deal than a lot of people realize it is, because when a dollar hits accounts receivable in all single provider practices and in most practices across the country, you've paid either all or a majority of your costs on that dollar already. Meaning, if I have $200,000 sitting in accounts receivable, that's right out of my pocket. That's not just, oh, $200,000 that I may get to keep 50,000 of. That's $200,000 that should be right in your bank account. So it's a bigger deal than a lot of people realize. So moving into the other numbers that we start looking
Adam,
at.
I'll even say it could be in many offices the highest factor of overhead.
Definitely.
The highest factor of their overhead. You know, they think they're paying their assistant too much. They think they're paying too much rent. They think they're paying too much everything. And you're like, dude, it's just you're not collecting your money. Right. And you're right. And if the ADA says that the average overhead is 2/3, so 65%, and you didn't collect $3, you've already paid $2 of that $3 in overhead. Right. So if your overhead's 2/3 and you didn't collect $2, you've already paid for that. You got to go produce $4 of dentistry, $6 of dentistry to pay the cost on that $4, to have $2 freed up to cover the account receivables you didn't pay. Right. I mean, I've seen dental offices where if their account receivables are right, their overhead had dropped 10%.
Yep. And so if we see a lot of these numbers out of line, that's immediately where we're starting to look. You know, if we see one out of line, it's probably that, you know, especially if it's a variable cost and nothing else is out of line, it's probably that number, either we've got something unique that we're doing there, that we like to use different supplies or different labs than other people do, or that you know, with just one number, we usually aren't having an accounts receivable problem. If I see 4 or 5 of those things out of line, where they're not even close to the ballpark, either generally people think, I need more patients. What I typically see is they've got patients in the chair. They're either underproducing what normally people are doing, and so not necessarily underdiagnosing, but underproducing per patient and undercollecting on those patients as well.
So the dentist only sees his practice or her practice. You see 100 practices for over a decade. Is there any supply companies that you think, you didn't mention names, are there any supply companies that are less expensive on average than the others? Any labs that you think are less expensive on average than the other? Any names you can drop for that individual solo practicing dentist?
So, I mean, I've done this for a lot of people. I've seen people using every different supply company you can think of, some not using any supply company uniquely, but price shopping everything. You can get this number into the right range with anyone.
Okay, and what is that range?
In 5 to 7% of collections. Like I said, if you're doing a lot of implants, a majority of implants.
Well, let me stop you there, because some dentists would say that all those implants parts would go under the lab bill, and some dentists, like when CERAC, they say, well, when I used to take an impression and send it to the lab, that lab went to lab bill. The impression still goes to impression. So when I have to buy a $15 CERAC block, that's a lab bill. So right. a lot of dentists don't have that in this place. So specifically, I want to nail down. So the $15 lab block, would you put that under lab or supplies? And if I bought the $115 implantsdirect.com implant, would that go under supplies or lab?
Great question. So anything dealing with the CERAC machine where you'd be sending that off to a lab otherwise, we classify like your blocks, your CERAC supplies coming through Patterson, or whatever company you're using. If you're using a different imaging service CAD machine, we classify those under lab fees because it's would otherwise be lab related work. And if we look at that and we want to compare apples to apples and see, is your CERAC machine a good investment, we need to have those classified, and we need to see, did that lower my lab fees? And not, wow, my lab fees are 2% now, but my supply fees are 14% now.
So in your expert opinion, what is your view on these new CAD CAM machines? Do you think they lower lab and supplies? Do you think they increase your net income, or do you think it's a wash?
It depends on the practice. It depends on the practice. It depends on the number of patients that you have. It depends on the number of crowns that you're doing. really to break even on most, we're looking somewhere in the 15 to 20 crowns per month range. If you're not hitting that, you're not going to be more profitable for having that machine. You're actually going to pay more on the cost of the machine than you would just sending those to a lab. So it really depends on volume.
And you think that's between 15 to 20 units per month for a dentist?
Yeah, that's typically what we see there.
And I'll throw my 2 cents on there is that, a dentist obviously makes more money than a dental lab tech. And in the old day, she was taking an impression, sent it to the lab, and the lab tech was making the crown. And then they get a CEREC machine, and the doctor who doesn't delegate, who has to scan and design and mill and has to do the whole thing, it's like now you just paid $100,000 to be demoted to a lab tech. But if you can delegate it and you send your staff over to Samir Puri at the Scottsdale Center and your 4 assistants get perfect at it, then I just prep, leave, and then come in and it's done.
Right.
So there might be a huge factor of are you delegating, but regardless, you think the break-even nut is 15 to 20 units a month.
Yeah, I mean that's a big variable that you mentioned, Howard. Is if you're doing everything, you're cutting a lot of your time out that you could be doing other work. If you're delegating, though, typically in the 15 to 20 crowns per month range, you're going to be more profitable with a CEREC machine or any other sort of CAD machine. So and like I said, those blocks would be classified in lab fees. Implants, where generally that's something that you'd refer out to a specialist. If you have 2 options with implants, right? You can do them yourself and pay for the supplies of them, or you can send them out to an oral surgeon or a periodontist. But really looking at that, we classify those as supplies. Implant supplies are generally going under supply costs.
Okay, you've been dancing around a chart of accounts, lab, and supplies, but let's go after the big 4,000-pound elephant, labor. I mean, come on. After you make payroll, do you even care what your light bill is? I mean, really? I mean, the light bill is a rounding error on payroll. So let's go after Mother Goose. Go after that payroll, labor.
Okay, Payroll's fun. It's one that I have to tread very lightly on because, like you said, dentists are really emotionally tied to the people that they've been working with for a long time. But it's the number that I see out of line. It's kind of a toss-up with supplies and labor, which one's out of line more often. But where labor is your biggest cost, that's the one that's out of line by the most frequently.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is I have 5 sisters, and my first assistant I hired 27 years ago is still there, Jan. Well, Jan is as close to me as any one of my sisters. I mean, she's like blood family. So yeah, and then they come to you every time the Earth goes around the sun. They think they need another raise. You know what I mean? Hey, the Earth went around the sun. It's been a year now. Time for another $1 an hour. I mean, it's crazy. So your job right now. This dentist only sees her labor cost. You see hundreds of labor's cost.
Yep.
Tell him what's normal, high, low, what's a red flag, and how do you fix it if it is a red flag? If it's broke, how do you fix it?
Okay, great question. So assistants, we usually like to see in the 5 to 7% range.
Can you abbreviate assistants just ASS?
I try not to.
5 to 7% for assistants.
Yep, 5 to 7% for assistants, generally 8 to 10% for hygiene, and then 7 to 9 for admin costs, so front office and
admin 7 to 9.
Yep.
So what is the total of those 3, low and high?
20 to 26.
20 to 26.
Yep.
And then let me ask you something, because this might be true or not true. A lot of dentists say, "Well, Adam, come on, I have high overhead because I'm in Phoenix, I'm in LA, I'm in San Fran, I'm in Salt Lake. Oh, you're in Provo or some small town." So we see 117 towns in America with over 100,000 people, with about half of America living there. And then we have 19,000 towns with the other half. And dude, the people are lower cost there, but so is the rent, mortgage, equipment. So when you're in Salina, Kansas, since your rent is cheap, your assistant's probably asking for a lot less money than downtown Manhattan. But as far as a percentage, are the percentages the same, Adam, or is it significantly lower percentage and higher net income in small rural America than in the 100 largest cities in America?
Great question. And the answer to that is typically in almost every situation, getting the right people is getting the people that have training in the more metro areas is going to be easier, which should provide you with more production, higher efficiencies, and typically can drop you into the right range in those areas as well. You have a higher pool of people to draw from. In those rural communities, you might get someone that comes in that's never worked in a dental office, but there's not someone that's qualified for that position that's worked in a dental office. So while you're paying them less, the efficiencies that are to be had there are also less. So while you will pay less in rent, you will pay less in the fees to your workers, you can get them in line. I've seen them in line in New York. I've seen them in line in Phoenix, in Salt Lake, in Provo. I've seen them in line really all across the country, but I've also seen them out of line all across the country. And at the end of the day, what we need to be looking at is if that's average for where dental practices can be and should be, I can come up with a lot of excuses why I'm not there. And I hear a lot of those. And Howard, I'm sure you've heard those as well. Why I'm paying my hygienist more.
Okay, so let's go through that. I love your range: 5 to 7 assistants, 8 to 10 hygiene, 7 to 9 admin. So when people are over, are they usually over with assistants or hygienists or admin, or give us some low-hanging fruit solutions if it is really over? I mean, what do you tell a dentist? I mean, what do you tell a dentist if he comes to you and his labor is 28%?
Right,
and and he's got one hygienist, 2 assistants, 2 receptionists. What do you tell him? Good
question. And we dig into each of those a little bit deeper. We break them up separately, and we'd say, okay, your wages, your payroll is high, and the majority of that's come from whatever it's coming from. Some people have really high assistants. Some people have really high hygiene. I wouldn't say there's one that's typically, if I had to say one was typically higher, it would be hygiene, but it's not so clear cut that I'm going to say it's always hygiene. It's whatever you've hired for. I've seen people paying their assistants $30 an hour, and that's really high. Their assistants costs are 12
and Adam, what goes into that 20 to 26%? I mean, go through the chart of accounts. I mean, does that include uniforms? Does that include health insurance? Does that include continuing education? I mean, what is that? What does that number include, and what does it not include?
Great question. So we say anything that is included as what we typically see as a benefit, or anything that is paid directly to them. So we look at their salary, we look at their health insurance, their 401k contributions, anything that's going towards
FICA matching.
Yes, FICA matching, and payroll taxes and those types of things. And the things that we would leave out of there are things that are furthering their growth. Uniforms we classify as a business expense. If we're paying for uniforms or paying for laundry or whatever that is, we're classifying that as a business expense. And then continuing education we classify as a discretionary expense. But everything that's going to pay them or to going through their payroll, so their payroll taxes, their health insurance, any retirement contributions, and any payroll, that should drop you right in that 20 to 26% range.
Okay, and Adam, what is a lot of dentists are paranoid that they're being embezzled from, and the embezzling consultants say it's usually the one that's your favorite, right, or really close to. If 10 new clients came to you or 100 new clients came to you, how common do you find embezzling?
We're pretty close to about 10% of everyone that comes to us that we are able to identify embezzling. They get pretty creative. Just about 3 weeks ago, I had someone come and do an analysis with us, and I noticed a few things that didn't line up. their collections as it was coming into their practice management system was about $70,000 higher than what their QuickBooks was showing for the same period, which a lot of times there's a small discrepancy based on timing, but $70,000, if you're accounting for things right in your practice management system and your QuickBooks, that's way too big. And so I identified that, and treading lightly again, because I don't want to just throw someone under the bus that doesn't deserve to be thrown under the bus, I said, it looks like you've got something going on here that you should be collecting. You should be getting a lot more in your bank account than you actually have gotten. And she said, I'm not surprised to hear that, because yesterday I got a phone call from my merchant services company that someone had actually loaded up a gift card with several $1,000s using her credit card processing machine. And they looked at the time and security, and they found out which employee it was. And it turned out she did have some embezzling going on. And so they get pretty creative. So there are some things that, for me to catch that on merchant service fees, I might say, do you use a more expensive merchant services account, because that's 3 or 4%, and normally we see that at about 2%. But I wouldn't be able to pinpoint, you've got someone loading up a gift card and taking a bunch of money out that way. So looking at the big picture, we can catch a lot of embezzlement just by bringing the dentist into a more aware state of where things are at financially for them. But there are people that specialize in doing that will go far more in depth and catch those types of things that maybe at a glance and with the depth that we're going into, we might miss there.
Okay. Adam, I always tell dentists, when some dentists say, well, are these guys any good or whatever? I always say, dude, they've been making a living in your industry for 10 years. Dentistry is a very small niche market. So if it's like a small town, it's a very small town. And if right. So you've been making a living in this industry, your company has for over a decade. So what do you actually do for a client? And be specific. I mean, how much is the consultation? How much of a monthly fee? What do you do for them? What do you don't do? Why have you been doing business in dentistry for 10 years successfully? Why are dentists giving you money each month?
Great question. So the value of our service is not only that initial consult. That's part of the package that everyone's purchasing, is going through that initial consult and giving them some direction on where to be focusing. The most valuable piece of what we do is we actually have a software that'll tie into several of the practice management systems and pull out a lot of key performance indicators in different categories. And then it also ties into QuickBooks, if you have QuickBooks, which is the majority of what people in the United States are using. It'll also tie into QuickBooks and pull your financials in, so that in one snapshot, when you see something that's out of line, you can dig into it and you can go look at all the key performance indicators that, if you see hygiene wages out of line, you'd start digging into hygiene and you see, okay, I'm paying my hygienist 50% of their production, which is actually not uncommon, which might surprise you because that's really high. But I see people paying their hygienist 50% of the hygiene production. So you'd look at
and
that.
Then you ask the same dentist, well, what is your overhead? Oh, about 65%. Right. Okay, dude, do you not understand basic math?
Right.
I'm going to pin you down on some details first. You're talking about your dashboard, right?
Right. Yep.
What do you call that? Your dashboard, or what do you call it?
Yeah, just the dashboard. So,
okay. Is it called your company's name dashboard, or
just Dental Intel dashboard is what it's called.
Dental Intel dashboard.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys have programmers?
Yes, we've got programmers that are consistently updating the softwares that we tie into.
So let's specifically, when you talk about QuickBooks, what accounting do you like? I mean, I know there's QuickBooks, there's QuickBooks Pro, there's QuickBooks Online. Do you like any of those more than the other?
I personally like QuickBooks Online just because of the ease of accessing it from anywhere. You don't have to do a VPN into your server and get on QuickBooks that way.
I agree. Do you have any clients that use the Microsoft Great White? Is it Great White Plains?
We don't have actually all of our clients.
Or Peachtree.
Peachtree. We have a couple that are using Peachtree.
What do you think? How do you compare Peachtree to QuickBooks Online?
They're pretty similar. User friendliness. I used Peachtree during my accounting undergrad, and user friendliness. I enjoy QuickBooks better. I think that it's more user
QuickBooks
friendly.
Online.
Yes.
And
Yep.
QuickBooks Pro is on your desktop.
Right.
And so the first thing a dentist is going to say is because QuickBooks Online, is the data in my computer or is it in the cloud?
It's in the cloud.
And is that what are your thoughts? I mean, I'm 52. Is that a scary thing to do, or does that not scare you? Or
It doesn't scare me, but probably because I've
you were
spent a
born.
lot of my life putting things in the cloud. It's the way that Apple stores a lot of my data and those types of things. It doesn't really bother me. And Intuit.
What about reliability? If it's in my desktop, I can log into it. How often do you try to go get your data online and it's not accessible?
I've actually never had a situation where I wasn't able to access QuickBooks Online as long as I have internet connection.
Okay.
I've never had their site be down.
Okay, so you're right. I agree. QuickBooks Online is what the dentist should be doing, especially for the 5,000 kids that are coming out of school that don't have any baggage with any deal. You just do QuickBooks Online. That is the best bet. Now, practice management software. Do you guys? I mean, there's Henry Schein has Dentrix. Patterson has EagleSoft. SoftDent, someone different has it about every 18 minutes. There's a big one out there. What's the one? Open Dental.
Open Dental.
A lot of. Is there any of those that you like more than the others?
That's also very dependent on what you're looking for. Some I would choose for ease of entering things in, and some I would choose for ease of reporting, and those are actually different.
Give names on that.
So Open Dental, if you understand how to do a little bit of programming, or if you search for it, there's a query for just about any number that you're looking for to pull a report on that out of Open Dental. That's very, very convenient.
That's why he started that company.
Right.
Because he was livid that I think he had Dentrix. And he wanted to extract the data out for a targeted direct mail piece. And he couldn't go into his own software to pull out the data to do direct mail pieces. It was a marketing thing. And he was incensed that it was his data, his patients, he'd bought the software, and he can't even pull his own data. So that was why Open Dental was started.
Right. And as far as
so reporting, you're saying with Open Dental, you can run a query for any data.
Are you there?
Hold on just one second.
What?
Sorry.
You could have at least said I'm busy. But so you like Open Dental because you can run any data query.
Like I said, it's dependent on what you're looking for. I like the robustness of reporting from Open Dental. As far as ease of reporting, not having to go search out a query and put the query in. EagleSoft, I do like their reporting. They have fairly robust reports that are easy to get to. Dentrix is probably easiest user interface wise, but not as easy with reporting.
Are you in Provo right now?
I am, yeah.
I'm looking out your window. Is that snow on the ground?
There might be a little bit. We haven't had snow for a while though.
But
I think it's just the tint of
Dentrix was born in Provo. You're in Provo where Dentrix was born, and
just right off the freeway. I pass it on my way to work every day.
And that's also where Gordon Christian has his CRA.
Yes.
But I think Dentrix was one of the biggest. Aren't they the largest market share? Isn't that the majority?
Definitely.
And I think it was because the genius that started that started it when he started. He chose Windows,
right.
So it's been Windows ever since.
Right.
And a lot of the things like SoftDent were old DOS-based systems that they try to dress it up so it looks like Windows, but it's just not
right.
Windows. And Dentrix is a completely pure Windows play.
Right.
So that's why it is. And what that means to the users is that every function that you're used to using on Word and everything is what Dentrix uses. So wherever you would point and click on any other thing you're doing on the internet, that's how Dentrix would work too. So that it's the easiest to train staff with.
Right. So user interface wise, like I said, Dentrix is fantastic. EagleSoft is pretty user friendly that way. They're user friendly for getting reports quickly and having quite a few reports. The robustness of reporting, definitely I would hand to Open Dental. Soft end, I'd put right in there at the same rate as Eagle
Okay,
Soft.
I'm gonna turn the screws tighter on you. So
Okay.
if I'm a dentist, tell me, how much money do I give you? How much does it cost? How often do I talk to you? This dashboard, more specifics. I'm your new client.
Okay.
Pitch me, Adam. What do I got to pay you? How often will I see your charming face? What date are you going to help me? And why do you think I mean, obviously you have to have dentists renewing with you month after month, year after year for a decade. Tell me why. Tell me the whole pitch and tell me why dentists renew with you. You know,
Okay.
why is this a good value for my fellow colleagues?
That's a great question. So we have a couple different packages. The typical package is about $5.99. That's each month. Basically, what that does is it gets you your dashboard. It'll tie in with your QuickBooks, with your practice management system, and give you actionable daily items at a glance. With that comes unlimited numerical support, your initial analysis, which is what I was talking about, going through the financials, making sure that they're classified correctly, giving you the points that you should be looking at initially to get the most value and hit the ground running. And then as you've got all the data in front of you, what we're looking at is the ability to make changes on a daily basis and see the effects of those changes without having to do hours and hours of reporting or hours and hours of tracking, because that's what your software, your practice management software is for.
So you say a numerical support? I mean, can the dentist call you each month,
Yep.
or how does that work? I mean,
They can call, they can chat with us online. I mean, they get, we'll send them updates, we'll send them notifications when things are trending in the wrong direction or when.
do you show this dentist how he's doing compared to other dentists?
Yep.
So how many things are on your dashboard?
We've got a lot. We should actually just do a demo for you sometime, Howard. But I mean, we've got three main categories, which is really the categories that dentistry breaks down to. I mean, if you look at the collections of a dental practice, we've got our patients, how many patients we're seeing, how often we're seeing them, how many new ones we're getting, how many we're losing. So we've got our patient flow, we've got our production on those patients. And that, like I said, that breaks down into hygiene, that breaks down into restorative, and then there are a lot of key performance indicators based off of each of those. And then we've got our collections on those productions. Those three numbers determine your top line.
Go through. You said three numbers. Go through the three again for our viewers. 1, 2, and 3.
So it's your patients, your patient flow.
So number one would be patient flow. Is that new patients per month, or how many patients you're seeing a day or a
Patient
month?
visits per month.
Okay, patient flow.
Yep, and then you've got your production off of each of those visits.
Okay, so number would be production.
Yep. And then once you've produced, it's how well you're collecting off of that. Every other thing that you're looking at boils down from one of those things. You look at new patients, that's in your patient visits. Am I not having enough patient visits because I don't have enough new patients, or because I don't reschedule my patients well enough? And those are the things that
And what do you
drills into.
and by the way, I think it'd be a fun thing. Do you ever get to Phoenix? Or do you do
Yeah,
this
actually,
online?
I've got family that lives in the Mesa area, and I actually lived in Phoenix for a while.
Oh, really? Where do you live? In Mesa?
My wife and I lived off of Cactus Road, so
That's North Phoenix?
Yeah.
That's Scottsdale.
that's if you get
So
out
you're
east
one of
enough,
those
it's
rich,
Scottsdale.
snooty, tooty Scottsdale people.
No, I didn't
huh?
live in Scottsdale. I lived in the ghetto part of Cactus Road.
I'm in actually Phoenix, but it's the southernmost. It's the part of Phoenix south of South Mountain. So it's
Okay.
Phoenix, Arizona, but everybody calls it Ahwatukee.
Okay.
Yeah, you tell anybody in Ahwatukee, you call it Phoenix, Ahwatukee, they look at you strange, but it's Phoenix, Arizona. If you're ever down here, that would be so cool. We'll demo this and capture it all, and we'll do a live demo. Or what you could do is on this podcast, do you have a film demo? Do you have a canned demo that you have?
Yeah, we're putting that together right now, actually.
Well, when you get it done, send it to me, and I'll hook it on in this podcast. So if you're and remember that when our podcast, a couple things. If you go to Dental Town, we get a transcript of all our podcasts, so you can read it. Okay, so this whole thing you can read on Dentaltown. You can also watch it on Dentaltown because we this is Skype, so we have a video that we put on YouTube and Dentaltown. But the majority of our viewers actually are from iTunes, so they're just listening. Right. So when you do that demo, realize that at least 60% of your audience is going to be Stevie Wonder. So you really got to talk through. You know what I mean? Because Stevie ain't going to see anything you're pointing to on the screen. But it's better than half the seminars they go to where you'd actually be Ray Charles. You'd be blind and dead. But okay, so then they're paying you what, 2 fillings a month? You're saying $600.
Yeah.
So if a dentist gives you the revenue from 2 fillings a month, you're going to be capturing all of his data from his QuickBooks Online and his practice management information system, Soft and Eagle, Soft, Open Dental, what have you. Right. And then you have to combine the numbers because our management information system is too third world archaic. By the way, you should just go down to the Dentrix next door when you drive by it every day. Stop by there every day and walk in there to the owner and say, oh, by the way, Howard Farran says he's a dentist with an MBA and he says you're nuts and insane and crazy. Have a good day. If you just did that every day for a year, he probably would come out and hook up to QuickBooks Online. And I mean, this industry is going to be very sick if dentists keep signing up for PPOs not realizing they're losing money. Do you know how many dentists I've met that were swamped and they dropped a PPO plan and now they net more money? Because you just intuitively gut feel, well, if you're just running from room to room and you're just working hard and you go home every night exhausted, well, that's good, isn't it? Because I have work ethic. I saw 20 people. Didn't I do a good job? I mean, I worked real hard. I did 20 fillings, and they don't realize that they took the profit from 10 fillings and subsidized another 10 they did at a loss. And if they get rid of the 10 they're doing at a loss, I mean, it's just sad that because of companies like Dentrix, these people don't know when they're losing money.
Right.
And that's just sad. It's absolutely sad. And it's so counterintuitive when you tell a dentist, in your situation, if you ran off a third of your patients, you would net more income.
Right.
And when you're a dentist, you're kind of like a fireman. A fireman wants to find a lot of houses on fire and put the fires out. A policeman wants to catch the bad guy. We want to fix all the broken teeth. But when you set them down and say, dude, these teeth you fix, you're losing money. You're taking money, profit out of your bank account and doing this at a loss. And they're just like, how could that be? And it could be because Dentrix doesn't hook up to QuickBooks Online. It's that simple. Right. It's just that rudimentary simple. Okay, so then this person, these dentists, over 100 dentists, how many of them call you each month, or how many of them email or online? How go over the communication with you guys on this data so that they can use this data to make decisions and change decisions and be more profitable.
Right. So I speak to all of the dentists typically at least once a month. It comes with unlimited numerical support. So if they have a question about a key performance indicator or what things are affecting that or why something is happening the way that it's happening, they're always welcome to call. So some I'm talking to 4 or 5 times a month. Some I'm talking to even up to 10 times a month. And newer people I'm generally talking to a lot more. And once they get the flow of things, then it's just a touch once a month. Things are going great. These things have moved in the right direction. Maybe we should be looking at these things. Do you have things in place that you're working on with those? How are those working? And then they've got all the data right there to show us how those are working. And we can say...
And Adam, more specifically, if you have 100 clients, what percent of the time are you talking to the dentist versus the dentist's spouse versus the office manager? How does that, because my whole mission has been with dentaltown.com, no dentist has to practice solo again. And at the bottom of the day, the dentists just don't realize, is my situation common or am I an outlier? So are you usually talking to the doctor's spouse? Are you usually talking to the office manager? Or does the doctor actually man up and does it himself?
We generally talk to the doctor. We'll get some calls from the office manager. They've got some numbers that they're kind of responsible for. So if those aren't moving in the right direction, we'll get the call from the office manager. But typically we're talking with the doctor at least once a month, helping him understand where he's at, helping him make those decisions. And then sometimes he'll say, okay, can you call my office manager, let her know what we talked about, and make sure that we're working on some sort of strategy to get this number moving where we need it to be. But typically that interaction is happening with the dentist.
And what percent of the time is it the doctor's spouse? Is
We've
that
got
pretty rare?
We've got a couple doctor spouses that are the office manager, and that's really the only situation that we have that in. If they're functioning as the office manager, then typically we're just working through the spouse because they can communicate to both sides.
Because I want to share one thing with the viewers. I'm been in dentistry 27 years. I've seen a gazillion dentists, and divorce is usually over. They say the main three things divorce is money, sex, and substance abuse. And so if you're not a drug or an alcoholic, then it just comes down to money and sex. It's a double whammy if you're paying money for sex. That's just a double no-no. But I think more marriages are more healthy when the spouse gets involved with this numbers. And if the spouse, because otherwise the spouse doesn't know, well, can we go get a new car or a vacation, or is this a good time to go to Aspen or whatever the heck? And when the spouse is intimately involved with these numbers with the dentist, they just have a healthier relationship because they both are seeing the scorecard and they both know we're broke or we owe a lot of taxes, or they get it. And hiding all this financial, eating that yourself, and then not being able to say no to your spouse on spending is just a recipe for stress and a blowout.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. I've seen that a lot where the spouse doesn't understand all of the things that go into running the business. And so when the bank account's low, they don't understand everything that's tied around that or tied to that. And they just see that the bank account's low and it can be harping on their side, or that maybe they don't even see that the bank account's low and they keep spending.
And then how many times have I seen the dentist say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did 5 crowns a day," and the spouse, if they're thinking a crown is $1,000, he did $5,000. So who cares if I go spend $500? I mean, that's only 10%. I mean, it's not like I'm spending 90. They don't know the overhead. They don't understand net income. Yeah.
Right.
So get your spouse involved with this.
Agreed. And it's something that the spouse could pull up at home. The doctor can pull up at work. You can pull it up from any computer. It's cloud-based as well. So you can pull it up from any computer that you have internet access on. You can pull it up on a tablet. You can pull it up on your phone. And she can
Apple or Android.
Yep. So she can see, or he can see, whichever the spouse is. This is the financial board. This is where all the stuff's pulling in. Wow, that's a lot less money ending up at the bottom line than I thought was actually ending up at the bottom line. Maybe I do need to make some changes.
And what are reasonable expectations, Adam? If I give you the money from 2 fillings, if the first 2 fillings I do on the first day of every month at 8 o'clock, I go in every Monday on the first day of the month, and from 8 to 9 I do 2 fillings, and I give you the $600. A year later, what percent of these dentists of your clients renew with you for another year? And why are they renewing? I mean, what is reasonable expectation? Did they lower their overhead 2%, 4%? Obviously, they wouldn't renew if they weren't finding value for the money. But I'm trying to help my viewer understand, what is that value? If I give you $600, do you think you're going to lower my overhead 2%, 4%? What do you usually see? First of all, what percent of your dentists renew after another year?
We have about 10% attrition over a year, so we keep about 90 for the year.
That's better than any dental office in America. I don't think any dentist keeps 90% of their patients in any given year. So you got that. That's awesome. 90%.
The best that I've seen, Howard, is 74% of patients in 18 months. Most people think that they're above that, but that's actually the best number that I've seen someone keep.
Oh my gosh! And what is the? Email me some quotes like that. If you can email me any quotes, I'll push them out with your name and website. So 74% is the best. What is the average and what is the worst?
You'll be surprised at the average.
What's the average?
32%.
The average dentist you see after 18 months is only seeing 32% of the original
32%.
patients. Adam, send me some killer quotes like that. And then if you tag it up with your name and your website, you'll get a ton of marketing publicity for that. But again, I'm turning the screws on. You only got you for 6 seconds. If the dentist does this at the end of a year, why do 9 out of 10 stay? I mean, how much better is it? Is that quantifiable?
I mean, I would have to look at the statistics. If I think in general, if we're not increasing your take home by about 5% a year, um, you- we're not doing either. We're not doing our job right, or you're not being actionable on anything that we're pointing you towards. So there are two sides of it.
Right.
Either are we giving you good data to act upon, and are you acting upon it? Um, and if you're not ready to be proactive, and if you're not looking for solutions, and the person that's ready to implement changes, this is not the solution for you. I'll be brutally honest. We'll ask you to make changes. If you're not going to make them, you won't see the effects.
Yeah, and that it goes same thing with a personal trainer and a nutritionist. I mean, people have always asked me to that I should get a nutritionist to work with on my diet. It's like, dude, I'm not stupid. I know when I'm eating a Butterfinger that it probably should be a banana or an orange. I'm not dumb. I'm just not. I'm just not ready to give up my candy and sweets.
Well, at least you exercise enough, Howard, that it doesn't really catch up with you.
There you go. Well, hey, well, our time is up. Adam Smith, I really enjoyed this. If you want to send me a demo to put on the back of this, or we could just do a separate one. We'll break it up. This will be that, and then we'll get a transcript of the demo. I would absolutely love next time you're in Phoenix visiting, stop by Ahwatukee, and I would love to have my office do this.
Great.
I would love my office to do this.
Yeah, I'd love to come meet you in person. We'll be down there pretty soon visiting some family in Mesa. So.
And by the way, to all the viewers out there watching, I'm much more handsome in person. You know, this is just a Skype. Skype makes me look old, short, fat, and bald. And it's I'm really a young, handsome guy. So, hey, I look forward to seeing you. Happy holidays, and to you and your family. And and do stop by Dentrix every day and tell that guy to hook up to Quicken. I mean, come on, that's low hanging fruit. Thanks, buddy.
I'll let him know. We'll see you, Howard.
All right. Bye bye.